So the first problem regarding the children of ISKCON after 1977 was that many of them were being molested or abused, mistreated, or they were being deprived of food and medical equipment or just basic necessities. They had a hard time sometimes just getting a bar of soap. So in other words, the children were being mistreated, and I guess you could say that they were being mass mistreated. Some children, of course, ended up in a good situation, but that was not very common. Many children, most children, were in a difficult situation, and many of them were being abused, and many of them were being sexually abused. Many of the children ended up eating rotten oatmeal, and oatmeal that had moss growing on it and everything else. They were not being fed properly, even. So the first, major issue, I guess you could say, regarding the children was that the assets that were coming into ISKCON, millions and millions of dollars in 1977, were coming in every month. But somehow or other, the money was not filtering down to the children in the schools, which were called Gurukula. Gurukula means the guru's school. So the gurus, they were not giving money that was required to manage the schools. Meanwhile, the gurus themselves seemed to have plenty of money. Jayatirtha had his own house and a big Volvo car. Bhagavan was staying in 4-star hotels. He had a gigantic BMW luxury car. Hridayananda was called the Beverly Hills Swami. He was living in Beverly Hills. He has, even now, a big town car. Hansaduta had his own private house and a Mercedes, and he was always allegedly carrying around $10,000 cash at any moment. Harikesh had a private house, a private sound studio, a private motorhome. Satsrup Das Goswami was said to be staying in Howard Johnson motels, and for sure, he also had a motorhome, and he was aloof. He stayed aloof. He had his own separate and very expensive lifestyle, which he still has, by the way. Jai Pataka also has a very, very opulent lifestyle, and in fact, he's as fat as a horse. He probably weighs about 400 pounds. There's no shortage of food for Jai Pataka. Bhavananda was buying expensive jewelry, and he was complaining that he couldn't find a pen that had the proper arrangement of diamonds and rubies on it that he wanted. So he had plenty of money, and he was traveling all around the world, going to exotic places, and some people think he was going there to have sex. Kirtananda also had plenty of money, and he had his own private cottage, which was full of small children. 5-year-old boys were jumping in and out of his cottage, and the orders at New Vrindavan were no adults were allowed to go to that cottage when Kirtananda was there with those boys. So what was going on with Kirtananda and those boys in there? Rameshwar also had a big luxury car. He was going to a swimming pool with some of his young female students. He had young female students sitting on his lap. He was going to aerobics classes. He had plenty of money. So there's plenty of money for these guys, but all of a sudden there's no money to buy a bar of soap for the children. What happened here? At the same time, some of the important school teachers were being driven out of ISKCON, like Yasodanandan and Dr. Sharma and many others. The people who had been in charge of the schools when Prabhupada was here were all of a sudden being pushed out of ISKCON because they did not accept that these 11 were gurus. Meanwhile, the parents who began to discover that their children were being molested were having a very difficult time processing the case or to get any justice. To give you an example, one woman told me that her son had been giving massages to Bhavananda, and she thought Bhavananda may have had some inappropriate contact with her son, he was only a 5-year-old boy at the time. And so this woman had a complete nervous breakdown. She was a disciple of Bhavananda. So I told Mukunda Swami about this. I says, Mukunda, there's a woman, her son, she thinks may have been molested by her guru, and she was very upset about this, and he just turned to me and he said, so what? I've heard many worse stories than that. So the leaders of ISKCON were covering up the molestation as much as they could. Around 1980, Sudhir Krishna went to Sridhar Maharaj and he said, Sridhar Maharaj, so many devotees are being mistreated in ISKCON. In fact, we think they're stabbing Prabhupada in the back. And Sridhar Maharaj says, well, who cares? Let them all go into the grave. So let the children go into the grave, let ISKCON go into the grave. Who gives a crap about the children? This was the attitude of the leaders and the advisors to the leaders. B.V. Narayan Maharaj was even worse than Sridhar. He just said those of us who were criticizing the child molesting guru program were poison. So he was trying to actually get us assassinated. Anyone who doesn't worship child molesters is poison. That means go get them. You can kill them because they're poison. They're objecting to our pedophile puja program. And actually, Narayan Maharaj was creating an enormous expense for these leaders. Every couple months, they would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars flying to India so they could hang out with Narayan Maharaj, where he was talking to them about the gopis and the intimate pastimes of Krishna and so on and so forth. While all the children were being starved, beat, molested, Narayan Maharaj was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars assembling these meetings with the leaders of the pedophile guru cult were his darling associates that he was hanging out with day and night all the time. So, in other words, a person like Tamal Krishna was propping up Bhavananda. Bhavananda was bringing all kinds of child molesters into the schools, and Narayan Maharaj was propping up Tamal. So they had a club. So I helped a woman named Diane Sturkowitz get a lawsuit going to sue Tamal Krishna for her children being molested, and right away, so many ISKCON people criticized me. They said, oh, he's a severe offender, he's offending the gurus, he's offending the messiahs. Narayan Maharaj was not happy, Sridhar Maharaj was not happy, and some of the followers of Sridhar Maharaj said, you're an offender, you're a big offender. So they don't care about the children. They just have no absolutely concern or conception that children need to be defended and protected from child molesters. And even today, after all the evidence is out that thousands of children were molested because of Tamal's regime, the followers of Narayan Maharaj are still telling me that I've been a big offender. They still think that trying to defend children from Tamal's child molester cult is a bad idea. In other words, they still have no mercy, no sympathy, no empathy for the children that were molested under Narayan Maharaj's jackboots. They don't care. So this is a big problem with, pedophile cults. The children just become, a show bottle thing. They were showing the children all dressed up nicely to get money from the Hindus. The children weren't getting any money. The children were being molested. The children were being starved. The children were being abused. Children were dying because they weren't getting medical treatment. Meanwhile, these gurus were sitting around with Narayan Maharaj, chatting each other up and glorifying each other, about how advanced and wonderful messiahs they were. By 1995, some of these children were now getting to be a little older, and they were so depressed at the absolute negligence of their whole situation, lack of concern, lack of lawsuits, lack of justice, lack of anything, just apathy from the parents and the leaders, by and large. I mean, some people were concerned, but by and large, there was very little concern. That some of them started committing suicide, and in fact, there was an epidemic of suicides that was growing and developing around this time. So I thought this is going to be another crisis. We're going to have a whole bunch of dead children, and this is going to be the headlines of the New York Times newspaper. Hare Krishna children are committing suicide. So I tried to say, let's get a lawsuit going, let's help these children, we don't want to have them committing suicide. And once again, many people said, oh, this is offensive, you don't want to, be offensive, Prabhu. No concern for the children or the welfare of the children. So a devotee named Prachitosh got Wendell Turley involved in putting together a lawsuit. And, of course, the children were, because they were molested and abused in ISKCON, they complained about ISKCON. They said, ISKCON is a corrupt, rotten organization. And because they made statements like that, some people said the Wendell Turley lawsuit is no good because the children are making critical statements about ISKCON and Krishna and Prabhupada and everything else. But why wouldn't they? In other words, why wouldn't they lash out at the church if they had been told that they have to worship child molesters by Prabhupada, that this was Prabhupada's order? Of course, they're going to be mad at Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was misrepresented to them. And so then what happened, I was trying to negotiate with the children and with Wendell Turley, and Steve Voith of Angelica, New York, and Mark Whiteley of England, they said, no more negotiation, don't even bother talking about the Wendell Turley case anymore. We don't care how bad the wording of the case is. We should just go and kill the children. The children should be killed, chopped up, and fed to dogs. That was their idea. So this simply convinced the children that ISKCON really was an anti-children cult. The good news is that the suicides dropped to almost nothing, and ISKCON developed all kinds of child welfare departments and child, research departments and all the rest of it. So they were forced to address the children's situation. So it helped all around, and, we saved the lives of many children by this lawsuit. And now people are saying Wendell Turley's a demon, this, that, and the other. Well, if the demons have to save your children from killing themselves, then what are you then? If the demons are saving your children from killing themselves, then what is your position? That's the problem here.